I have a friend from Plymouth. I used to make her say water because she'd always say water. And I'd say, Julian, say water, and she'd say water.
I have to repeat myself in restaurants sometimes when I ask for water because the waiters go, I'm sorry? They're like, what? Water, please. And then it's just easier just to say it in an American accent.
I'm a huge Downton freak.
Yes.
And I'm very excited about this movie. What was it like getting the gang back together, although I'm not sure I would necessarily describe these people as a gang?
Well, it's what we call ourselves, it's the gang, it's the Downton gang. It was brilliant, all getting back together again after 3 years, and we are like this big family, and of course spent so much time together over those 7 years on the show. It was a real privilege to be able to come back together and do it for the big screen. But in a strange way, it felt like we'd never left.
Really?
Yeah, Alan Leach says he feels like he fell asleep in his trailer for 3 years and then woke up and we started doing the film.
Did you all stay in touch when the series ended?
We did, and there was a few Downton things along the way. We had exhibitions opening all over the world. There was one in Singapore and recently one in Boston, and so we would come together for a few of those events. But for me, it's Laura Carmichael is someone I see all the time, because we live very close by in London, and Alan Leach as well. So Laura Carmichael, who plays Edith, we're very close in real life, which is always a funny anecdote, really, because of course characters are always at each other's throats.
And in fact, I used to be very aggravated with you because you were so mean to Edith.
So mean.
And in fact, Mary was kind of a biatch, let's be honest.
Oh yeah, I mean, and in the end, Edith, she it came to a head, and that's what she called her, quite rightly. And she said it twice.
Yes.
She said it twice, just to make sure Mary knew she was a bitch.
I always loved Mary, but she was, I know I'm acting like these people are real, but she was quite cold and really dismissive of Edith in a way that made me sad for Edith.
Yeah, I mean, they had, Julian writes siblings very well, and I think that dynamic between the sisters, it started very early on because Mary was very dismissive about Patrick, who was her original suitor, who Edith was very fond of. So from the start, it was this rivalry going on.
So it must be funny being such good friends and having to be arch rivals on the show.
We kind of love it, and during the series, we would ask Julian, what's next for them, and if we'd always like go to to certain scenes in the script and just be like, yes, we get to have a cat fight in this moment, and it was just a lot of fun, and always Laura and I were just on the verge of laughing, because it was just so funny to be doing those scenes together and trying to keep a serious face. And what's interesting in the film is that they've kind of got to a very settled place. They're both happy, they're married, they live very far apart, which I think is healthy.
Did you miss Mary in these 3 years that you weren't playing her?
I did. I mean, I think initially when we finished the show, we were ready to say goodbye and move on to other things, but definitely there were parts of that character that I just loved so much, and I love her kind of, unapologetic, nature, and her wit, and her strength. I did miss that, and I miss the clothes, and so yeah, by the time we did the film, I was so ready to get back into her shoes.
Were you happy to get back into those clothes, or were they ridiculously uncomfortable?
They were uncomfortable in the early days because we were in corsets. So in that first and second season, the costumes were way more uncomfortable. And then of course, once we hit the 20s and women were liberated and we got the vote, the corsets came off. So
and then you got to wear sheets, really, that were much less form-fitting.
They're much less fitted and looser, and but it's more about the delicacy of the costumes. I mean, Anna Robbins, our amazingly talented costume designer, we've had several who have been amazing throughout the show, but she would find a piece. She often goes to Paris to find authentic pieces from that time, and one of my dresses, the top half is original. So she found a dress that was perfectly intact at the top, but in tatters at the bottom. So she would then keep the top half and then make the lower half. So they're so delicate. So you have to treat them with such care. So they're very, you can't move around too much. Some of them are so perfectly placed that Mary's not the sort of character who kind of gestures
right.
all
She's
that
very
much,
controlled,
which is good because it would ruin the costume. You go like that and it would rip immediately.
But I think it actually speaks to how women had such limitations back then, and weren't free to. I guess that's in some ways a metaphor for their position in society.
Absolutely, and it's a theme that is throughout the whole show really, and into the film. And
what were the biggest challenges for you or for the whole group in making a movie instead of an episodic TV show?
I think it's quite funny that Mary's always it's my first line in the film. She says, we need to make a plan for the roof because it needs fixing. And I looked at it and I thought, oh, it looks fine in those shots. It looks pretty intact. But yeah, of course, it's just so much, so much detail went into the film. And of course, it always had such a kind of cinematic feel anyway on television. So I think it transferred very easily in a way onto film. Because for me, it always looked very filmic.
It did, and it's always, the show to me was just so much fun, so much visual splendor in the show that it just was always fun to watch all the colors and the shots and the cinematography, that's what you call it in the series, but in the film especially, it's really extraordinary.
Yeah, it's stunning. And I think like you said, along with the music, it's magic.
In addition to Downton Abbey, you have been involved in many other film projects and television projects as well. What has excited you as much as Mary?
Godless was something that I really loved, and it was a real departure from Mary, and getting to get back into period costume I really loved because I'd been doing modern stuff up until that point. So I was sort of thrilled to be back into a kind of period thing, but a Western, which was so different.
Right.
And we had cowboy camp and all of that stuff. It was just so different from anything else I'd done. So that was a really great role to play. I also loved playing Letty in Good Behaviour. That was a great character. But there's a sort of, I think there's a thread to all of these women that I've played. There's a similarity in their strength, their complexity. I always feel like there's kind of notes of the other as you go on to the next one.
So is this the end of Mary? Are we gonna hear from her again, do you think? There's gonna be another film?
We're being, the film has only just hit the screens and we're being asked if there's gonna be a sequel every day. So possibly, I would be ready to jump in and do it all over again.
You would?
I would.
You're not ready to say goodbye to Downton Abbey?
I think if there's, if there is an appetite for it after the film and people want more, then why not?